to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pone ain't drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message at the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pone Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try and force in some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 493 of the Trinity Force Podcast, your premier League of Legends podcast, coming to you every Monday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Friday, depending on when you get the MP3. We can find us live over at twitch.tv/T-Force Podcast every Monday and Wednesday at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Tonight's episode is going to be discussed jungling. So we brought Beaver on, and Chira decided to show up on the perfect night as well. Yeah, Dom is here too.
Yeah, they let me show up this time.
Dom threatened me. He texted me and he's like, "You fucking better show up." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yes, my lord."
Yeah, sounds like an accurate description of the events.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened.
I'll corroborate that story.
Yep.
I enjoyed that story. I could see Dom doing that. Gets done with a loss. He's really mad. He wants to go kick his dog. He's like, "No, I'm taking this out on Shaw."
I do not
Sweet
kick
dog.
dogs. My dog
how
is
dare you.
amazing. In fact, she's sick right now. I would never do that.
Hey, do you want me to call Pete on Adam right now, guys?
Yo,
Yeah, I think we should.
No. Yo. I didn't say he kicked his dog. I said he wanted to kick his dog. Therefore,
I've never wanted to kick my dog.
I think you're just projecting.
Yeah,
is that cat behind me?
I am now fearful for your cats and dogs. I don't know how many you have of each, but
Where's she at? She's right there. See her?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, look at that little kitty cat.
Yeah, get out of there. You're in
I'm now
kicking distance.
fearful for your animals.
Well, guys, people should be fearful of the jungle animals because we're going to talk about junglers this evening. But before we get there,
Mama, give the golf clap.
BuddhaBoxers.com/T-Force. Go check it out, guys. You guys get yourself some amazingly comfortable boxers. We talked about them quite a bit last week. We're not going to spend too much time on them, but yeah, they're out there. My microphone stand is not working right, so I apologize. I'm trying to get this going. So, all right. Feedback at TrinityForcePodcast.com if you want to send us feedback on anything we said. No, we do not kick animals ever. So don't email me. I love animals. I love them all.
I love how you have to qualify this entire thing now because of the comments that you
Every
made
show
earlier on the
he's have to be
This
like,
is-
I don't kick animals.
Yeah,
We get a
he's
lot of
like,
lit.
You know what? I'm gonna make bad jokes that just don't go over that well, and fuck, I'm gonna have a whole lot of hate mail.
Pow. He got it. Boom. I've had hate mail over worse. So
I know you.
or less, I should say, over less. I've had hate mail for not talking into the microphone properly. So little
Oh, you
things.
deserve that.
Thanks, Sean. Welcome back.
Yeah, no problem, buddy.
So we're gonna talk about jungling, and then probably wrap the show up with a little Zoe discussion. Other than the fact that she's being banned all the time, she's just really annoying to play with. So there you go. That's Zoe discussion. No, I want to talk about jungling because Dom tweeted out last week after a string of bad games that junglers should not be herbivores. They should be carnivores, and they should be ganking more lanes. And whatever it was with those 10 games, we had the least present junglers I've ever seen. And then we start playing, and we get a couple junglers here and there, including Beaver, that'll actually gank lanes and put pressure on maps, and people can use that to attempt to snowball the game further. And it's a totally different game when it's played that way and the way it should be played. So I want to talk about a bunch of tips, tricks, and little nuances to the jungle this evening and get you guys out there actually playing the jungle.
And I guess to sort of expound a bit, since I inadvertently kicked off this whole thing, I really feel like the game gets decided right now by whichever jungler is better. And that has probably been the case for League of Legends more often than not in its history, but it feels more pronounced right now than it has at many of the other points along the way. Especially like if you have a game that you lose in like the or win or lose in the 22 to 27 minute range and everything, it's because one jungler was just clearly better than the other player. And the games that don't snowball out of hand are because the junglers were about even, or there was a colossal fuck up somewhere and everything. But in all likelihood, it's like the junglers were about even in their skill and what they accomplished.
Well, that actually plays into what what's a big piece of why junglers are powerful at the moment. That's just the snowball craziness that's going on in the preseason as a whole. If you're able to get an advantage and roll that into something early, a jungler that's able to successfully get a gank off early puts whoever, because of how snowbally things are, puts whoever he ganked for at a huge advantage if they're able to knock somebody else out of lane for even a small amount of time.
Yeah, the game's low resistances, really quick games. So you're absolutely right. Junglers have the most influence of any role right now. And that's how it's always been. They've always had the most early influence on the game because you don't see them and you don't know where they are. And they can just roam around and do whatever they want because that's the entire job description of being a jungler. So when they don't have that power, it sucks to be a jungler because then it's like, what's the point of playing my role? Because I don't get to abuse my power spike, which is supposed to be early game. Then there's mid laners. They get to influence a lot more of the mid game because of their item power spikes and roaming potential. Bot lane gets to, all throughout the game they're pretty much good, but mid to late game they sort of take control, and top laners, they do their thing.
Right.
Well, one of the tricky parts about jungling, like all the lanes, it's you have this idea. You need to understand what your matchup is. The 1v1 for the solo lanes, and then the 2v2. You need to understand certain nuances when you have a power spike advantage, when your opponents have that one, and what you're supposed to do therein. For the jungle, it's really not that often when you're in some type of 1v1, skirmish with your jungle opponent. More likely than not, if you encounter the enemy jungler, it's probably going to be at a lane somewhere. You might encounter them in their jungle or your jungler if you're up against a player with a very specific strategy or play style going into the game. But by and large, junglers have to understand, kind of all of the matchups that are going on everywhere else on the map, because that's where they can press their advantage the most.
Yeah, a lot about being jungler isn't having mechanical skill or good reaction times or anything. It's about making
sense.
quality decisions and having a high level of game knowledge. I still hold, you can get to challenger and not be the most mechanically gifted player. Just because you have good game knowledge in the jungle, being in the right place at the right time, making good pathing decisions, like you said, understanding. You have to know the jungle matchups, like what are your strengths versus the enemy's strengths. That's always the case, but it's not super hard to get that sort of down. Like an example, if you're playing a Shyvana into a Rams, you're gonna have the early game over him. But if he does get a few lanes ahead, then he's gonna start to suffocate your lanes. So you have to make sure that things are warded, and then you can try and take his camps. But yeah, you're right. You have to understand lane matchups, because we'll talk to this point a little bit later, but that's where you decide where you're going to put your pressure, because you have you basically have 4 options when you're jungling. You can 5 if you count power farm. You can power farm, gank top, gank mid, gank bot, or pressure the enemy jungler. So power farming is, it used to be good, but it's not really a viable strategy right now. If you're in silver and bronze, it's fine, you can power farm, but if you go into the game saying I'm just gonna farm this game, let my laners do whatever, it's not gonna lead to a high level of success going forward.
I've definitely noticed a lot of people that are jungling, whether or not they've had experience playing out of the jungle or they're just trying stuff out because it's the preseason. And there are a bunch of people that are just farming and are afraid to gank or other things like that. Does anybody think that might be, again, talking about the snowballing nature of the game right now, it's a kind of fear of getting behind to the point where once you do get behind at the moment, it's really, really, really hard to kind of mount that hill?
I don't think so. I think it's just people don't know how to jungle properly.
Yeah,
I think that's the problem.
Very well. That
so
could be it.
They're power farming. The modern day power farming is not like it used to be with Feral Flare or Devourer. It's you're playing Shyvana or you're playing Yi or you're playing one of those other champs, Udyr, that have crazy farm. So you should be ganking lanes that are overextended or on your side that has crowd control. You still want to be pressuring the map, but then when you do get ahead, you take your advantage into the enemy jungler and you move into that 5th strategy that I was talking about, which is pressuring the enemy jungler. Now you're making it a 1v1 where you're clearly asserting your dominance on them by taking their camps, setting them behind. So a counter jungling strategy.
Right. People start jungling because they get. I think a lot of people get upset with lane matchups and haven't learned. They feel it's less mechanically intensive to go out of the jungle, which isn't necessarily true. I'm not talking about Lee Sins or anything like that. It's just I feel like some people move to the jungle because they feel like that's going to be a better place for them for one reason or the other.
To be honest, for those people that feel that way, it is a better place for them to be until somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing decides to counter jungle you, and then you're so far out of your element that like it was better off for you to just lose that lane matchup.
Yeah. I agree with you. My point going forward here is that it goes along with what you said, because it can be better because you can feel more comfortable, but you have to put yourself outside of that comfort zone and start playing the matchup like it needs to be made. You have to be ganking and making risks. Like, jungle is a lot more about making risks than it is anybody else in this game, because you can sit in a lane, never die, and just kind of farm up and whatnot, but junglers have to take risks because they have to gank and they have to set themselves up, for whatever it may be, an objective, a kill, whatever. And they have to set themselves up for potential failure as they dive a tower and they get 2v1, right? Because they made a call.
It's about making calculated risks, and those risks become less, quote, risky as you get better at the game and have more knowledge, because you know where the enemy jungler is, where they're pathing, what the potential of your two champions are versus their two champions in skirmishes, and this sort of stuff just comes from playing the game a lot. So you can limit the amount of risk there is by starting jungling with champions that inherently don't have much in their kit. So I'm talking about like A to like S plus tier junglers right now are like Xin Zhao, Rek'Sai, Kha'Zix, and Sejuani. I would say those are some of the top 4 junglers. None of them really have much mechanical skill. Don't move on to your Elise and your Elises and Nidalees. Like, they're all great champions, trust me, but you not only have to have the great game knowledge, but
Make
you have
life
to have...
easier for yourself.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
stay away from them.
Learn don't walk before you run.
Mm-hmm.
Well, instead of this is all the pretty generic general advice we talked about. And it's a nice intro to get into this, but I want to talk about more like the nuances of jungling. And we've talked 100 times over about jungle timers. But if you're not subscribed to the Champion Select podcast series, that series on patreon.com/TForce Network, a little shout out for that. We bring on a lot of master level players who talk about playing this game, and they all say the same thing. No matter what lane I'm in, I learn jungle timers. I'm a jungler, I know where the enemy jungler's at. I'm a laner, I know where the enemy jungler's at. I know where my jungler's at, etc. And if you're jungling, you need to learn those. You need to learn exactly where you're going to be at what time. Why do we always say that someone's going to show up top at 245? Well, it's because we understand how fast this character farms, and we understand that that is the most likely path that person is going to take. Same thing if they're going to walk in the mid at 248, because that they do 3 camps in there. Now, to expand on that point, I do want to say that a jungle route isn't a route if you're not averaging something like 4 to 5 CS. What is it? 4 to 5 CS per second, or something. There's like, what is it? It's like 3.5 to 4 CS per second. That's a route, because you're able to clear and gank and clear and gank. A route from going blue, wolves, red, that's one route, because you're clearing quickly and you can gank. But after that, if it all goes to shit, that's where you need to start looking at your gameplay, right? Like, how am I incorporating farming and ganking into this properly? Otherwise. My point is, you have to have a plan, and your route has to go along with that plan. You can't just aimlessly go, well, this camp is up, I'm going to walk over here.
Okay, so yeah, like when I load into a jungle game, like right now, because the game's snowbally, I don't like to do full clears anymore. That used to be a thing I would do because it was safe, and I knew I would have a lot of gold. You can on some champs, but the problem is, like, you should be taking machete and going buff wolves buff, and now, like Adam said, this is like 245 when you're done all this. And Ezreal, who's like the fastest 3-camp clear, would be 230, so that's good to know for laners. And if you're a bit slower, like a Sejuani, you're more like a 3-minute sort of area. So it's between 230 and 3 minutes. That's when laners should be wary. So once you finish your second buff, you now have a power spec. You're level 3, you have double buffs. What do you do with this? So if you start a bot side to get a leash, you're top side. You can gank top, you can gank mid, or if none of those are available, I usually take it on a game-by-game basis. I'll go into the enemy's jungle, no matter what champion I'm playing, just to get some vision down to just see what they're up to. And then I can use that information to move forward into my game plan.
And here's another thing, too. If you... This is a fun little counter jungling thing. If you go into a jungle and you're trying to pick something off, whether or not you run into the enemy jungler or not, if you notice that a camp or 2 camps that you're running by are gone, you can ping or let your team know that the jungler is likely on the other side of their jungle because they had just cleared this out.
Yeah.
And that's super helpful because, you know, you can, if you know where they aren't, you can know where they're likely going to gank.
Yeah, that's tracking 101. They're not here, they got to be on the other side of the map, basically. So yeah, it's your job to convey that information to your team. Just because you walk into the jungle and see that all the camps are down doesn't mean that your teammates are paying attention to the map and what information you've just discovered. So make sure you can just ping like their bottom side jungle a couple times, or you can literally type it in chat, whatever you want.
So when you are looking to set up a gank, you need to also look at what your laners are doing. This is a tip for laners. Now, I'm going to take a step back for a moment. Dom, you laughed at me earlier because I kept saying soft freeze because I learned a new term, right?
I was only laughing because like you kept saying it over and over. It's like, okay, we get it. You learned some new words.
And when I was saying that, just to defend myself because I'm going to, I didn't mean it. I'm just like, we got to break this, got to break this because I'm trying to get myself in my head to, you know, it's my way of, you know, repetition helps you remember shit. It's my way of doing it. So that's why I stopped saying it.
I got it.
You're conditioning yourself.
Yeah. But anyway, the whole soft freezing idea, if you guys don't know what that is, you just kind of like hold a lane, you kind of freeze it, but it's going to eventually push out in your favor. Dom, I don't notice if you noticed this afternoon when we were playing, but I continually tried to freeze lanes more this afternoon, and it led to like more ganks for our bottom side. Like Xin Zhao came down there because the enemy had pushed us up, but we kept it outside rather than going on the tower. Beaver was able to come down, etc. I'm trying to be more cognizant of the idea of freezes, and I think more laners, if you learn how to freeze lanes or keep lanes in your advantage, it sets the jungler up to to let them come gank. And this specifically goes for top and bot.
That's really well said. Yeah, always. Like as a jungler, when I'm looking at the map, I want to gank overextended lanes because those are the guys that have more space to run back to their towers. So it's going to be easier for us to get more damage off to them. So like earlier today when I was playing Sedge, that Orianna was pushed up the tower at like 245. She was shoving, like poking the Zed on her tower. Like she's dead. Doesn't matter if she has flash or not. We're just going to walk up to her and kill her, which is what we did. And then since she didn't have flash, I think I came bot gank for you guys. I don't remember if it worked. But then I just went back mid again because she didn't have flash and she kept shoving up. So you want to be hard focusing on players that are very aggressive. Now, this could be in their nature. Like Orianna can be a defensive champion. But this person was pushing up and up and up. So I knew that they were free kills and a free snowball. But by comparison, there are champions that are aggressive by nature. So you have the likes of Darius and your fighters, Zed, mid laners like Talon, things like this. A lot of those champions only have one direction, and that's to go in. So once they're in, they can't come out, and they're usually easy to commit. Like it's easy to bait them as a laner. So yeah, those are the kind of people I will always focus on going into a game. And that sort of plays out as you go. But then on the other side, if you are a jungler who is very good at counter ganking, which is important to learn, which basically means that you know what the enemy jungler is going to do so that you can be in a place to turn the tides of the battle. And usually the counter gank is always stronger than the original gank because they've blown all their gap closers and CC to kill the one person, and then you get to come in with your CC, your gap closers or damage, and finish them off. So Warwick is a good example of this. He has really good movement, so he can get into positions well. And that's easy too. Like if you have, let's say, a Jace, and he's playing into a Riven, and he's pushing her and pushing her and pushing her, and the enemy jungler wants to gank them, you got to make sure you're in a place to keep your Jace safe because he's always going to play like this, and you want him to snowball out of control. So,
a quick thought for, all the listeners out there and everything. Think about all of the times that your opponent has frozen the lane in a spot and you didn't want to walk forward because you knew doing so was going to lead to you getting, like, attracting the jungler, lead to you getting ganked, and you were going to die for it. And you ended up missing out on a whole bunch of CS and everything because you knew walking forward was going to just create a shitstorm for you. My question is, why aren't you trying to do that to your opponent more? Like, if you know how bad it
Yes.
feels, why aren't you trying to put them in that situation more? And that's the thing you need to start like taking to every single one of your games from a laning standpoint and everything, is try to create opportunities for your jungler. I think way too many of us, self-inclusive, but way too many of us go into games thinking, like, jungler, you got to show up, you got to do something sooner or later and everything, without taking our own accountability and saying, like, how many opportunities did I really create for my jungler? There have been plenty of times where I was like, we have a great gank opportunity bot lane, and the jungler is top counter jungling or top dying or top ganking, and then, hey, at least then then I can feel good about stuff that's going on. But like when the game is otherwise neutral, there is some accountability on the laners because I didn't create opportunities for my jungler to come and do something.
Yeah, and freezing is one of the best ways to do it, or slow pushing or whatever, because it can build up huge minion waves, and you can use that to your advantage too. And then, like we said, there's more space for them to run back, more time for you to kill them. But there are also opportunities you can create with diving, but those are more dangerous. And I'm not going to lie to you, if you're not playing in high elo, junglers are going to be less likely to come and dive lanes. Like, as soon as you push into a tower, they see that as like ungankable. I'm serious. That's what it's like.
I want to rephrase. Junglers are going to be less likely to be able to dive and do so successfully. They might still do it because they're crazy,
Sure.
or they see something and they're not really thinking it all the way through and everything. But odds are good that a dive is not going to turn out the way you want it to, just because you have pushed it up to the enemy turret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dives are easier to successfully
Talk
do.
about than they are to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's easier to do it when you get better and better players because they know how to juggle aggro and whatnot.
Well, especially solo queue or something where you're not on comms with somebody else, it makes
Yeah.
it way more difficult as well. Like if you're talking with your top laner and both of you know what's up, like that's a whole different story. But if it's just a random, like a lot of times it's just not worth it.
Yeah, I agree. But once again, like I'm just saying, if you're playing in like any elo, like any of the lower elos, sometimes junglers just don't see diving as an opportunity that they want to put their resources into. So that's why creating other opportunities is powerful.
Which I understand.
You can't expect somebody to read your mind. You can't read their mind. They can't read your mind and everything.
No, and
so
you
even
can't.
if something looks like a good dive to you, that doesn't mean the jungler is seeing it the same way. The jungler doesn't know if they can count on you. Jungler doesn't know what abilities of yours are even on cooldown.
The not knowing if they can count on you is like 90% of the time where I don't feel like diving. It's because I don't know who the fuck this person is. I don't know realistically how well they can commit to a dive. And then second off, if I have double buffs, there's no way in fuck I am risking them on a dive that might go wrong to give to an enemy who's just going to turn around and kill the guy as soon as I'm dead.
Yeah, and you can't always expect your teammates to have the same level of game knowledge as you. So as a jungler, often when calling objectives and stuff like this, maybe in your head, that since they just got bot inhibitor, all of you guys should be going to Baron. But your teammates just go out of base wherever. Like you have to make sure that you are imparting your game knowledge onto the game. Like basically, that's how you are going to influence it. So
at the same time, if you've also been watching your laners and one of them, like one's doing really really well, and you feel like they might actually be able to work a dive out, go ahead and dive.
Hell yeah!
Like that, it's you just have to pay attention. Like get a feel for the skill level of the people you're playing with.
Yeah, and
but don't expect anything amazing.
Yeah, but by the same token, if you find yourself in a game where someone's been auto-filled into a role, if they've died a bunch of times, like I'm not really gonna try to put too much of my resources into them. Like, yes, I will help them so that they don't fall way too far behind by telling them, like, please just farm as much as you can. But I want to be putting my precious early game resources, which is the enemy not knowing where I am, into
somebody who's likely to carry.
People who are going to help me carry later into the game, right? That's just how it works. And that can be champions too. Like, I'm not going to gank for a Malphite. He doesn't need it.
Well, let's continue. Let's run some of these tips. Cause I want to run down some of the tips that we've put together and then kind of go back and talk about reviewing jungle games after we've read all these tips so you get an idea of what you're looking for.
Sure.
And I'm going to probably piss Dom off by not starting at the top and rolling down.
Oh, no, you made this doc. I don't care.
There is a whole horse load of them in here. I probably should post this document and all these tips out there for listeners who want to view it. You know what? I'll put it on the subreddit, at least all the tips, so that people get an idea what's going on. But just a few of them is that we talked a lot about wards, and even Beaver put it in here. It seems obvious, but your role is unique. Unless you're caught by scouting wards, the enemy team can only guess where you are. And the same goes for a jungler, where extra wards are good. So Green Smite is phenomenal. Picking up that tracker's knife and dropping wards down into the enemy jungle. Dom, that ward that you placed in our jungle near the dragon pit that catches him coming out of 2 bushes, technically 3 if you count try, is a beautiful ward.
The one right behind the dragon pit?
Right.
Yeah, so one of my favorite wards in the game, especially if I'm red side, is it's right behind the dragon pit. Usually there's a blast cone right there. It's my favorite ward because most often, like, people don't, early game people don't ever sweep right there. They always sweep in the brush because, wards in brush give vision within the brush, and that's valuable. Most people aren't super attentive to where they place their control wards, so they very rarely place a control ward that actually gets vision of that spot. So you still have vision of everything that's coming toward, like, funneling towards bot lane. And then, it also gives you some dragon security in the long run and all that type of stuff. But it's just like, like Adam said, it's this big intersection where a lot of people are going to run through because it's the most efficient way to get to bot lane, but they don't end up sweeping or looking for that ward. And so, like, that's why I love putting it there.
Yeah, and I have to say something like, if you see the enemy jungler on a ward, that especially one that you've placed down in a place where they're going to be, don't assume your teammates have seen the jungler cross the vision, so make sure to ping it. I made this mistake earlier in that Sejuani game I was playing. I placed a ward in the Pixel Bush on the topside river, and Hecarim pathed through it. He was just on the edge of vision. He pathed through, and it was obvious to me that he was looping around behind Baron Pit to go and gank our top laner, but I didn't ping it until he was probably, like, behind my red buff, and by then the top laner was dead, right? So I should have pinged it as soon as I saw him on vision, and I shouldn't have assumed that the top laner knew that he was going to take that path.
That's the other thing. Like, there are a lot of junglers right now who, if your wards catch them right around the time they're getting to the lane, you've caught them. It's too late. Like, it's Hecarim and Rammus being really popular and good, and Rengar as well, just with the leap he has from the brush and everything. If you catch them by the time they are, like, really close to the lane, it's too late for you, and you're probably going to die. But if you have your wards further towards the center of the map, I guess, and you catch them moving in that direction, like, that gives you actual time to get out of harm's way and prevent a gank from being successful. Like, the jungler's not going to waste as much time because it's going to be very apparent that you have backed off, but you didn't die.
Yeah, if you were in mid lane and you wore the side bush and Hecarim hits your vision when he's moving at 700 movement speed with Predator, you're going to die. Your ward's not going to save you, so you got to place it deeper into the jungle so you can, like Don said, you can sort of preemptively move to their movements, so react to them before.
Right, and don't forget to ward the wraiths, by the way, because that camp is generally it's up every 1 minute 40 seconds, I believe is the timer on it, 1 minute 30, and so that camp is almost always up, meaning someone's going to be always walking near it, use it or to do it. So warding wraiths is going to get, I guess they're raptors now. Warding raptors is going to give you a lot of information, and keep using those pings. Smart pings are an amazing thing. If you see the jungler, like Beaver said, you got to ping it. Just alt up with your mouse.
Well, especially because a lot of laners are paying attention to CSing and other stuff. If somebody just shows up for even a half a second, they probably didn't see it. So if you did notice it, let people know.
I don't blame them. Like, it's totally fine if you've missed it, but it's your responsibility because you've seen it to let your teammates know. Like, when I lane, I never look at the map. But as a jungler, there's not much else to do when you're clearing your jungle. Just hit your abilities. So I'm just, like, cruising around the map, making sure everything's going on. So. And
I've heard a lot of low MMR players complain that, I ping, but my teammates don't do anything about it. Doesn't matter. First, you made the effort to try and communicate to your team to give them, heads up and sort of create maybe a potential advantage for them. Second, it's just a good habit to have. If you're really, like, committed and you start climbing and everything, your teammates are eventually going to start paying attention to this type of stuff. They're going to appreciate it. And it's a skill you already have instead of one that you need to try and develop when everybody else is already doing it.
I was about to say,
that's really well said.
Worst case, it doesn't make a difference. Best case, it works exactly like you wanted it to, which saved somebody's life.
There's literally no downside to pinging. Yeah.
Listen, if you want to be high elo, you got to play like a high elo player. I don't give a fuck if you're bronze 5-0 LP. You need to do all of the right things. And you know what? If you start coming to me and telling me, oh, but this works so well in my elo and this and that, then ride it, make it work, but continue to make the right choices and do the right things. Don't make stupid fucking tower dives. You know what? If you're anything lower than Diamond 1 and you're not on comms with 5 people, just don't tower dive, right? I know we were wrapping back to that, but just don't tower dive. Don't make stupid decisions like that. And you'll climb. You'll climb up to gold, no problem. You got to rein in these stupid decisions and start playing like a plat or plus player if you actually want to get there.
And then you finally get to play with your silver friends and be called a tryhard because you're not even trying hard because all this stuff is easy.
Yeah.
You know what? That's fine. I found new friends. I found my platinum friends from the discord.trinityforcenetwork.com.
There's something to be said for playing to the MMR that you're in. But by that, I mean, like, don't decide to be a Callista main in bronze and silver, because Callista requires a lot of nuance for both, for your team to understand, not even your enemy, but like for your team to understand. And it's really easy for your teammates to do stuff wrong with Callista on their team, especially like the support who's going to be the soulbound person and everything. It's really easy to do stuff wrong there. And then you're kind of like giving yourself an extra handicap along the way that wouldn't be present if you were playing a different champion. But that doesn't mean make the same decisions, the decisions that are common in that MMR and everything. You should still play smarter.
Well, that silence is everybody slowly agreeing with Dom. Something else to throw out there. If you're jungling and you decide that you want to be an herbivore for whatever reason, skip the large camps. So what I call the large camps are like don't skip them necessarily, but be cognizant of when you're taking them, because like Krugs and Gromp can take a little bit longer than Race and Wolves can for a lot of people. Specifically, Krugs can take a very long time because you're kind of like hard set for how fast you can kill them. So don't skip them, but have an idea why you're taking them. If you're taking Krug's bot side, on blue side, you're likely going to be ganking soon, or you're setting yourself up for a counter gank. It's kind of like a way to give yourself the time to do something. And Gromp hits hard early. Hits very hard early, so it can be hard to take, and it can leave you very low. So just keep in mind as you're doing that. But if you do decide to do those, Scuttler, in my opinion, and maybe viewers have something else to say, Scuttler should be the last place that you stop, or should be a good breaking ground where you decide what your next move is going to be. Use it as like a kind of like a reset. I know I'm going to kill Scuttler. I'm going to look around the map, and I'm going to figure out where I'm going to go.
Scuttler's garbage. Don't take it. The only time I take it is before setting up objectives or if I have nothing else to do. And also, Gromp isn't necessarily harder to do because a lot of people should be taking Machete now to start because of the lifesteal it gives you on single target. So Gromp isn't bad because it's just one.
Well, that you're assuming that they're going into precision at all to get the extra attack speed to make it worth it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Just a side note of that, like right when the runes changes hit, Sean and I got to do a game, and he picked Udyr, and he had no idea what any of the rune stuff even was. And I just told him, pick precision, because that'll give the attack speed that you're used to, and you can figure out all the other stuff later on and everything. And have you been running precision on Udyr like ever since then?
Yeah, that's all I do. It's all the attack speed. You just play attack speed and run very fast.
And you see so many builds where people or for so long people were going like in every other rune and everything. And I think now are more and more junglers settling on precision.
Yeah, missing the attack speed sucks. Like, there's a lot of champions, outside of pure AD assassins who have like high scaling, like Kha'Zix and Rengar, you can take electrocute on them because they have so much burst. They can blow up camps with their abilities. But people like even Vi, I play a lot of Vi. I know a lot of like Super Metroid, the one trick, he loves electrocute just because it makes his ganks a million times better. Because usually you Q them and then you auto tech E and they're dead. And that triggers the electrocute, but then you have a harder time clearing the jungle because you don't have the attack speed. So it's kind of like hit and miss. If you're ganking a lot, I think domination's better, but it's obviously dependent on the champion.
I played Kha'Zix earlier and with Dark Harvest, and I really liked Dark Harvest on Kha'Zix because I felt like I jumped out and had this gigantic burst damage that wasn't electrocute, just from power farming.
Well, the stats say Dark Harvest is not that good.
Yeah, I prefer electrocute just because of the consistency, but Dark Harvest can be more powerful in certain situations.
I didn't actually look at the stats for Dark Harvester. from everything I've talked to, all the people I've talked to that are Masters tier, I've talked to quite a few of them this week, actually. They've all said the same thing where they think Dark Harvest is actually going to be really amazing once everything else gets a little bit of a nerf.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with
I
that. It's
agree.
also incredibly busted on ARAM.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
of people dying all over the place. You
Yeah,
get huge
bet.
auto attack bursts. It's awesome.
So I got more I got more tips in here. Do we want to keep going through them?
Yeah, man.
You know what tip that I want to tell people, junglers? Stop using I'm going to call it the dandelion, but the vision cone. Stop using the dandelion when you're going to go for a gank. Like, if you use that, people know exactly where you're at.
Yeah, it'll let people know.
Yeah.
The same
It's-
with like if you're gonna go for big objectives.
Yeah, the blast. If you're about to sneak a Baron, don't fucking blast cone it, please. That triggers me. Just sweep it. Because as soon as you blast cone, that's a trigger. Like, you should know where the enemy jungler is, or at least if the support's missing, you know it's them roaming up. That gives you information. So it's a great tool, but you have to use it properly. And since we're talking about the plants, I'm a big fan of the cones. They're really OP for ganking. You can use them to basically avoid vision. So a classic one is you start blue on bot side with your bot side's help, and you go wolves, then red buff. So it's like 245. You take the blast cone over the wall, because if they're way pushed up, they'll ward the tri bush, and then you just go around them and you're out of vision. Or in the bot lane, if you're ganking bot lane from that same side, use the blast cone over into the river, into that that long bush, and then you just run down. The ward's in there, but if they're pushed up and you pop over into the bush, it's too late. Like, you're already there, and there's nothing they can do to stop the gank. So you can use them to your advantage to avoid, or sort of like just go right through vision. Element of surprise, basically.
And it means you didn't have to put something like a Kazakh's jump or
Yeah.
the flag and drag on cooldown.
Yeah, you still have your gap closer.
There's so yeah, use cones, abuse blast cones, abuse the plants, but use them properly, right?
Know when to use them. Yeah.
Who put mid needs love and bot needs love in here?
That's probably you, because you hate that I gank top all the time.
Somebody put
but
mid needs love, and I was like, hey, bot needs love too.
We played
Every
today, but I did
everyone
not
needs
gank
love.
top once today.
God, it
Well,
felt
playing
so
League,
good. I was just
Didn't gank
thinking.
top once.
I went to use the bathroom before the show, and I'm like, you know what? I actually enjoyed playing those last games. Not because like we walked out with a ton of kills or anything, because we didn't, but just because I got some love, and then I felt like I
But-
wasn't pressured the entire.
But do you
fucking
guys
game.
understand why I didn't gank top? This is the important part.
One of them was
It's because
Heimerdinger, and that was an
ganking
impossible
top would
lane.
not have helped us win the game. I always make my decisions based on who's going to help us win the game. Ganking for a Heimerdinger into a Yorick is not going to help us win the game. I want to gank for our Zed, and I want to gank for our Zyra bot lane. That's how we're going to win. You know, Heimerdinger was like, I think he was like useless that game. He must have been like 08 or
He
something.
got one kill.
He got ganked a bunch, but that was such a waste of time. Like, getting that specific matchup ahead wasn't going to help anything when we were running the show as 4 for the rest of the team, you know?
Right.
We can
Got
carry that
one
guy.
kill for us when we needed it, like just to get somebody important off the map who was like otherwise about to escape. He showed up and
yeah.
had some nice timing, but otherwise, like, no, he
And we had that second game, which we ended up losing just because we messed around. But I was playing Rammus, and our top laner was a Shen into a Maokai, and the Shen got camped, but I knew he was going to be useful no matter what, what his score was, because he was farming decently. So I just tried to put the pressure into our mid and bot lane. And we ended up taking Annie left to take those 1v5s. So, we lost that one.
Shit happens.
We should have won it, but yeah.
the Annie with Dead Man's Plate.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And there you go. That what he just said was actually another one of the tips. You just got to give the teammates with the snowball matchups the love, right? Or give the teammates that are going to win the game the love. But if you're ganking for mid or you're ganking for a bot, I think it's good practice to push out the wave after the fact and get mid to walk down bot with you if they're healthy enough, because you can get 2 ganks for the price of 1. And people at that elo should know to follow the jungler down bot if they're walking down there after someone dies.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Taxing is important. Make sure, and it's not so that you get gold. We've already talked about this a million times. Like, even if they're pinging you back, just push out the wave, because that's going to deny the enemy. And then, yes, roaming after the fact is good, because now your guys are out of vision.
Push the wave only if the enemy's minion wave is smaller than your minion wave. wave. If the enemy's minion
of
wave is
course.
larger than yours, don't push it because it's
No.
not worth the time. You just want it to freeze by the time the person gets back there.
Backing up just a touch to the snowball stuff and everything, I think it's worth noting that bot lane is really hard to gank, and that's why people are scared to do it. Bot lane is also always a snowball lane. Like, it's always a snowball. There are other matchups across the map and everything that may or may not snowball and everything. Bot lane is always a snowball. It just doesn't matter. You
Well,
get
especially right
one
now.
or two kills for bot, and like that turns everything around.
You
There.
guys have changed my point that I wrote down on bot lane, but like, ganking bot lane is my favorite thing to do because it snowballs 2 of your teammates plus yourself, so 3 of you. That's the majority of your team. Plus, it puts 2 of them behind. That's excellent. It's great odds, and it's just as much time and quote effort as it is to gank mid or top. But the problem with ganking bot is because there's an extra player on each side, there's a lot more variables to take into account. So the success rate of ganking bot isn't always as high. So that's why when you look to put a lot of pressure on bot lane, you have to make sure those variables are in your favor. So that's like luck support, ganker. She's useless. But when you're 2v3ing someone like Braum Draven, you gotta be careful because those guys can turn around to 2v3.
And that's the type of stuff we're knowing and everything. Janna is hard to gank. Like, if she can knock you up, she can stop you in your tracks and doing what you're on, and her passive makes it easier for the AD carry to escape and get out of trouble. Karma and Lulu are harder to gank because they can speed people up. But
they're all but
they're still gankable.
They are gankable, and it's important to put pressure on those kind of lanes because if you don't, they can get out of control really easily. And in that game, we ended up losing because they had a Lulu that just followed her on the vein and just let her kill everyone because we didn't have enough crowd control for her. So maybe if I had put more pressure on the vein earlier, it would have taken her longer. And it did take her a while to get forward.
We didn't have enough crowd control because she had Quicksilver Sash and Mikhail's coming her way.
Yes, I was playing Rammus, and we had a Shin, and we had whatever, but still, it wasn't enough. But
like
she hit critical mass and then took over because we were messing around on the map, not pushing objectives. And that's what always happens in Solo queue. You just want to go get kills.
They were supposed to do. They did what they were supposed to do. You can't fault them.
Yeah, they played well.
They
came back and they played well. So.
Well, now that we're done talking about the game that the rest of the listeners weren't in,
yeah,
I want to talk about the Scuttler a little bit more because Beaver might not like it, but I like the Scuttler. I think it's a really good objective to take it at points in time, but using it properly because it stays up for, what did I say? It stays up for 90 seconds, and then it's down for 2 minutes. Is that what it is? I can't remember the exact time it's down for before it comes back up. All I know is that it stays up for 90 seconds. So if you take it pre a dragon, remember, keep that in mind. You have 90 seconds once it dies. But using the Scuttler, you can use that to like reset yourself if you're low on life before you're going to gank because you'll just naturally regen as you're attacking it because it obviously doesn't do damage to you. But 2, when you're attacking it, it runs away from you. So whichever way you attack it, it's going to run the opposite. So you can force it to go the direction that you want to gank next. So say it starts down at the bottom of the river and you start attacking its backside, it's going to run toward the top, allowing you to take it, then run into top lane and get a gank. At the same time, if you stun it, I still am surprised at the number of people that don't know this. If you stun it, CC it, whatever, it makes it so it only has 10 armor magic resist. It reduces it by 50 or 60.
50.
There you go. Armor magic
resist.
Which is why it's harder.
You guys like it when I do the drive-by crowd control? Like, say I'm Leona and I'm running up to towards mid lane for pick a reason. I will, especially if my jungler is someone like Shyvana who doesn't really have crowd, easy crowd control ability, or Master Yi. There are a lot of junglers who don't have it and everything. Do junglers like it if a support does the drive-by crowd control, or do you want to like regen more from your smite 'em?
Well, it depends. Like 95% of times, yes. Because you want to clear the scuttle and then move on to another objective. You don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
Well, that's the other piece of it too. If you're playing a jungler that can't take it quickly, it's considering that the river is a spot that is arguably the most warded out of any other spot on the map. If you're playing somebody who takes a while to clear a scuttler and you're literally running the length of the river while attacking it, chances are there's a ward that's seen you, so they know the enemy team knows exactly where you're at.
Yeah, and also if you are by yourself in the early game, this is why I don't like taking it early. If you're Elise or something who has a hard crowd control move, like You use your cocoon on it, and now your cocoon is down for 15 seconds. So if you do run into the enemy jungler, you can't fight them.
If he runs into you at Scuttle, you can't fight them. If you decide to go gank because their jungler ganked while you were on your you were killing Scuttler, you ended up eating it, and then you're going to turn around to gank.
It's also pretty easy to.
As effective.
It's also pretty easy to bypass the Scuttle vision in the early game. So I mean, a lot of the time it's just the gold that you're getting out of it and the movement speed. So yeah, using your important cooldowns on it can be dangerous. So I mean, if there's nothing else to do, the enemy jungler is dead or whatever, then yeah, go for it. But just pick your moments.
Riot has a rune entirely dedicated to just giving you bonuses when you're in the river. Is it possible we are all not fully appreciating how much time people how much time you spend, or at least some of us spend in the river?
I wish it told us how much time.
Yeah. It has a timer.
Yeah,
at
that
the
would be
bottom
nice.
That lets you know how much time you've been actually gaining a bonus from it. That'd be kind of cool.
Which tree is that in again?
Sorcery. The water walking.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't usually take it because I usually take Celerity or Scorch. Scorch is
Right.
OP.
And you don't take it because in your head you read oh, that just doesn't sound that useful. But I'm sort of how much time do we really spend in the river?
I think as a support, it'd be the most useful.
You think so, but I mean, you spend a lot of time taking taking routes towards mid lane that aren't through the river either. I mean, I keep looking at that and wondering if it would really be valuable, and ultimately I decide that something else is more important to me, like Mana Flow Band and the Ultimate Hat, or I can't take both of those, but Mana Flow Band and Scorch, or Ultimate Hat and Celerity.
Yeah, I think the consistency of the others are just outweigh it, right?
Right.
But
yeah,
it'd be nice to know that timer, and then you could test it.
All right, I want to talk about reviewing your jungle games a bit here too, as we head near the end of the show, and that's we tell people all the time to go ahead and review their own games, but this is also something that we look for when we're reviewing your games. If you sign up on Patreon again, but if you decide to look at your own game, you can always look at what you. We're always looking for what did I do right, what did I do wrong, and why did I have this. When you first pull it up, obviously, watch a gank and go, I did this because of this. But something else you could do is pause and turn on the game so you can turn on all the lights. And you can go, all right, well, the enemy jungler was here. So as I'm ganking here, the enemy jungler was here. Now you can start writing timers down. And if you do that for multiple games, you'll get a better idea of jungle timers. It might not work. It might work better if you... I was going to say it might work better if you do it on somebody else's that has more consistent timers, because I know that bronze and silver players can be a little awkward with those, but it can still give you a good sense of what people's thoughts are when they're trying to roll through the jungle.
Yeah, I think getting your jungle, if you're in silver or bronze, you don't necessarily know what you should be doing in the certain cases, so that's why getting someone to help you with it is a lot more beneficial to you. But once you have an idea of what you should be doing, then you can look and see your mistakes, or at least you can acknowledge your mistakes. And if you don't know how to fix them, then you can start to look for resources to do so by listening to us, sending us your reviews, or even going on Twitch and watching some players who play similar champions to you.
Right. Because that's the big thing. I want you guys to look at your jungling games and go, where was I when the enemy jungler ganked? What was I doing?
What time was it when I died to that gank?
Right. And what time was it that I died, and why? Because if you can look at it and you go, the enemy jungler was ganking at 3 minutes, but I was now clearing my fourth camp. You have to ask yourself, why was I doing that? And what was available to me, or should I have been here?
Yeah. Just as a general point, I think the best way to climb is through self-improvement, and you can't have self-improvement without taking accountability for what you do. So when you lose a game, even if, whatever, the Vayne tumbled into a Morgana queue, what could you have done to make sure the game never got to that point? That's really important. And yes, reviewing your gameplay and writing down what you do wrong, where you died to a gank. These are all things that you can slowly work on to get better. Because at the end of the day, you just want to slowly improve. You're not going to get to Diamond in 10 games.
No, it's going to take you 200 or 300 or more.
Yep.
Yeah, another thing to ask yourself is, were you in a good position to take an objective fight or counter jungle when the enemy jungle shows? So if the enemy jungler shows in an area, were you in a good position to help that out? Something we didn't mention in the tips and tricks section was, if you are doing a camp, no matter what the camp is, and almost no matter how low it is, you should drop that camp and go help somebody out. If you are taking red and there's a fight breaking out, just leave it. I think, earlier, Dom, you and I were doing Rift Herald as Alistar Kazakhs, and a fight broke out just over the pit, and we just fucking left it. We had it already half dead. We just left it and started engaging the fight. And that's what you have to do.
Yeah, but you have to know that you're going to make an impact on the fight.
Of course, there's always that.
Same thing as like when you're mid lane and your enemy mid laner has roamed bot, and you see them on your ward, you're like, damn, they're already there. Don't go bot. You're not going to do anything. Shove out the wave. So the same thing goes for jungling. If you cannot help them, don't just start going there, finish what you're doing, or take advantage somewhere else. But yes, if you're right next to, if you're doing Gromp and they're bot lane skirmishing, just go and see if you can help them.
Right. And
this all comes with knowing your champion, right? Like, you know if you're going to get there in time. But yeah, it sucks wasting time, because you imagine going bot lane, not being able to do anything, and then having to go back and redo the camp, or having to go mid, and now, or having to go back mid, and now the wave is being shoved into you and you don't have enough mana or whatever. It sucks. So you got to take advantage of, if you can't help in one area, you have to take advantage elsewhere. Talk about this a lot, though.
That's all right. It's always worth to say
consistent
over and over and over again, because people listen to this show and they go, all right, I learned this information, but they don't ever take it heart. It's been 493 episodes, and I just now started looking at wave manipulation more in depth than I previously did. I knew how to manipulate a wave.
What a soft freeze.
Right, I learned what a soft freeze is.
I don't even know what a soft freeze is. The only thing I know how to do with the waves is how to create a super wave. That's all I know how to do. Super waves are killer, by the way. We talk about that one day.
I'm bringing, which one is it? Kashuna on to talk. No, not Kashuna. The GP guy. When I did the GP champ select, he said within the first 4 to 5 seconds of the laning phase, you can lose the game completely because you fucked up when it came to wave manipulation. Because that's top lane in a nutshell, though. Yeah, like, just to give you an example, this isn't a soft freeze, but to give you an example, if you are in any lane and you use an ability on an enemy,
triggering me.
It's gonna keep you. You use an ability. The enemy minions now start attacking you. Now the wave is now pushing into the enemy instead of pushing into you, and now people can manipulate that, allow the wave to walk back into them. Now think about just outside the tower, that little area where the minions can't be hit by the tower, and they're not in risk of walking toward the tower. If you stand there and you keep 3 caster minions up or 2 melee and a caster, that's called a soft freeze, because the lanes will keep walking into the waves will keep walking each other. But the problem is they'll just keep walking, and they'll slowly start pushing toward the mid after 4 or 5 waves. But that's why it's a soft
whenever
freeze.
The cannon shows up.
Yeah, essentially whenever every 3 waves, that's when the cannon shows up. But that's a soft freeze. It's right there because you want to leave it there for that 2 minutes it takes, because that allows the enemy jungler to come down and gank.
Yeah, and then you can build up an absolutely massive wave and then dive them.
Exactly. And that's the point. And that's where this all comes down to. You start with a soft freeze. I'm going to keep saying it just because it's triggering people at this point. And then but you don't actually hard freeze. Hard freezing is a lot harder to do because you
have to drag the wave, and you have to have lifesteal.
Yeah.
A couple other things.
Exactly.
You have to be Nasus, basically.
Right. and I've talked about that. You have to have the 3 caster minions attack you. You have to drag them down into a bush and then walk back up. And
you also have to have a reason to do that, right? Like, only certain characters want to just do nothing but farm.
Exactly.
Whereas the soft freeze, which is basically creating a massive slow pushing wave with multiple waves together, is aimed to deny CS and kill the opponent under tower.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, well said.
And understanding all that stuff is like it's not just the laning phase when that's useful. The longer the game goes on, the more important it can be to like get a lane pushing so that the enemy has to go and divert put some type of attention to that, and that creates an advantage for you. And I just see way too many people either think they have to be there in order to get a split push going, and thus the opponent might have an opportunistic 5v4.
You can make You're totally right. You can make your minions work for you. If it's super late game, like 45 minutes, and your team's all grouping up in your bot lane, and the waves just crash each other at the middle, just kill the back 3 casters, and then your wave will very slowly push, and you'll have like 4 or 5 waves of minions together, and those things will just murder towers when they get to them. So then you're at that stage where they're pushing down the inhibitor towers, and your team's sitting there around Baron as 5, and you're like, you guys are going to lose your tower unless you go back. Then they go back, then you engage on them. That's how you can win games without even being in the bot lane to split push.
And I know it feels good to get your CS score as high as possible. And I know it might feel weird to leave a certain number of minions just standing in one spot and everything while you go and do something else. But trust me, like, it's worth the effort to set that push going. Instead of waiting the extra time to kill those extra few minions, or disrupting what what killing them is otherwise going to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Or you can put Banner of Command on a melee minion. It would do the same thing.
Just keep in mind how many times you've seen giant waves crash the tower and you're pinging, well, someone's got to go take care of that, but they'll take Dragon if you do it. It's because someone either set it up or accidentally set up a large wave push.
By intent or by accident, they set up a slow push.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But you have to recognize those if your enemy sets them up in advance so that you can deal with them before they become a problem. You don't want to be dealing with the minion waves when they're crashing into your tower, like the huge ones, because then your enemy can clearly take advantage of you.
I haven't built Banner in such a long time.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good anymore, but
nah, it's just other.
It's like situational, right? It's like
Banner was so good for a while there.
Ohm Wrecker, man, I love that item.
Well, Banner felt great when it gave ability power, but now it's an alternative to Locket, and I'm just sort of like, there's never a situation where I want
to Locket though.
Right, that's just it's like Locket is so much better if I'm building Aegis of the Legion.
Yeah,
and like even against a full AD team, I would still rather have Locket, because at least 2 of those champions on that full AD team are going to deal a lot of burst damage, and Locket's shield is great for mitigating burst.
There we go. There's a lot more to be said about jungling and how to properly jungle. If you haven't, go check out there's a lot of high elo junglers out there. You can just YouTube jungling tips and tricks and whatnot. I'm sure you'll find them. But Beaver, do you know anyone else out there that makes good YouTube VODs nowadays?
My favorite junglers to watch, well, I like Foxdrop. He's good.
And he's been around forever.
Obviously, there are some other good players like Tarzan. He's pretty toxic though, so he does have good game knowledge.
You know what? From everything that I've learned in the last week, it's that every master and high elo player is toxic. So.
It's true, they are toxic. I also started streaming, so you guys can come check me out. It's twitch.tv/HeartlessBeaver. I try Foxdrop. He's got good YouTube stuff.
All right. I think we're going to end it there. I'm going to post this list of all this other stuff. We may or may not have gotten to the entire thing. It's going to be on the subreddit. That's at r/T-Force Network. So you can go check that out over at Reddit. Plus, there's information about upcoming Champions Like podcasts. I have recorded Gangplank and Zaya. I am also recording Fiddlesticks and Lucian with tomorrow. So those will be out in the next month. Beaver and I are actually working on overhauling Patreon as well. We're considering doing some extra podcasts or just rearranging how the podcast tiers work. So maybe adding a podcast to $5 tier. We're not quite sure what we want to do yet, and we're gonna figure out how we're gonna push that out here in the future. But keep a look on that. We're gonna launch those January 1st. We're gonna figure something out before that and launch up on January 1st with that. So we just want to get back and allow you guys. I know the holidays just came up, and $5 might be a little easier than $10 a month, and we want to give you something for your money anyway, because we appreciate you guys. 2 podcasts a week isn't enough. So we'll leave it at that. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the Trinity Force podcast and the Trinity Force Network. We'll be back on Wednesday. We'll probably, Wednesday we'll do an actual Zoe. Well, shit, I won't be here. These guys maybe will do an actual Zoe discussion on Wednesday.
Isn't Wednesday going to be a patch day?
And if it's not a Zoe discussion, it's going to be a patch day. So there you go. You look forward to something. Guys, we'll see you episode 494 next time. Peace.
Later.
See you guys.